Hello, members. Welcome and good evening. And what a good evening it is going to be, I'm sure, not least because we're in for a real culinary treat for those of you who've ordered the meal kits. And to be honest, just learning and absorbing from Brooke and Danny is going to be an absolute delight this evening. So I'm going to do a small bit of housekeeping before we start. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Anna Spooner and I am a tastings and events coordinator here at the Wine Society. Hopefully some of you have met me before, either virtually or in person. But for those of you who haven't, hello, and what an event to kick off with. We are putting the event this evening in webinar format. So what that means is you'll only be able to see myself or Brooke and Danny. There are two ways you can watch us. You can either watch speaker view, which is, as it says on the tin, you can look at the speaker, or you can watch a side-by-side view called gallery view. You can do either and it won't matter this evening. We've only got the two cameras on. Brooke and Danny are together, and I believe right in the heart of it, in Simon Rogan Central, as it were, right in between the sort of, restaurants and all sorts of crazy stuff. And they've found a lovely small area of peace to join us for this event this evening. We've also got behind the scenes Tim and Gil from the tastings team. And if you do have any questions, you can either send them a direct message on chat. They're under the little alias or alii, tastings team and tastings team 2. And you could also email them. So if you really are having some serious problems, send them an email, tastings@thewinesociety.com, and someone's going to be managing that all the way through tonight. If you haven't done a foodie event with us before, this is probably, I would say, the hardest meal kit we've had to make, although I have already done it once when I paired the wines, and I say hardest with the most rewards. But because of that, we have allowed for some decent breaks this evening. Hopefully, you'll have received the running order from me. If you haven't and you'd like to, please just email the tastings team and they'll ping you across a PDF. But you've also, if you have the food kit, will have received the wonderful instructions as well. So hopefully we're going to guide you through it. We'll be here with you the whole time. Don't worry, we're not going to leave anyone high and dry not knowing what they're doing. So we are going to break. Feel free to, if you don't have the meal kit, use the break as an opportunity, chat to your fellow members, use that chat button, see what people are thinking of wines or if they're drinking something else. And also, Brooke and Danny will be hanging around during those breaks. So if you have any questions on food prep, you can also message them directly on Brooke and Danny, and they'll be able to help you there on the chat too. We also, there's a lot to say tonight, apologies. We also have the Q&A button. Now, we do have time for questions at the end. We're actually going to squeeze some questions in just before we have our pudding because it does take a bit longer to cook. So we're going to squeeze the Q&A in before the last course and a little afterwards if we need some more time too. But if you do have any questions, be those wine questions, food questions, all of that, then please use the Q&A button and we'd be delighted to answer those. And then I suppose it goes sort of without saying, chat to your fellow members. I've already seen some people saying where they are and what they're drinking this evening. Please do let us know your thoughts on the wines, your thoughts on the dishes. This is designed to be an interactive, very casual but informative evening. And what's better than sharing? Okay, we can't share wine and food together. We're from all over the country. So even pre-COVID, logistically, this would have been a nightmare. But we are so lucky, actually, that At Home by Simon Rogan exists now because it actually means that we can bring more great events like this to more members. So we're absolutely thrilled. Now, I have to be honest, I'm cheating a little bit this evening. The truffle puddings were very kindly added to members' boxes as a little treat. So I don't actually have a truffle pudding, which is very sad. I do have the Chardonnay to enjoy. But what we're going to do to kick off is I'm going to introduce Brooke and Danny. They're going to talk a little bit about Simon Rogan, the provenance, ingredients, a bit of ethos. And then also, I'd quite like to hear a bit more about these truffle puddings that I don't have that are apparently incredible, and also the bread and the butter, because I do have that. And I have to say, my colleague Catherine wolfed hers down yesterday when she received her pack because she genuinely thought, I can't hold back. It smells so good. So do feel free to nibble on the truffle pud, the bread, the butter, and you can start to dip into the Chardonnay in this round as well. We'll go into more detail on the Chardonnay shortly. But I think most importantly, I need to introduce Brooke and Danny. So both of you who do have the Chardonnay as well, and I understand Danny's rather excited about it, so that's great. A good cheers to you both and welcome.
Oh, cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really, really looking forward to tonight. Really excited to talk to everyone about the dishes, about the wines as well, about the ingredients, which are, we source from local areas, from really, really trusted suppliers. And suppliers that we use all through the restaurants as well. Nothing differs in our at-home boxes to what we use in the restaurants as well, which Danny is definitely going to be able to tell you a lot more about as and when we try the dishes.
Like Brooke says, really excited to be here, really excited to learn about the wine as well. It's something that we are both interested in educating ourselves more on, which is why we really want to be here as well. So it's a great time that we can share my knowledge about food, share your knowledge about wine. So there's a lot to take in. We are really excited about this. We've been waiting for it for a while, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. So, planning. Yeah.
Well, we did have to postpone it, but Brooke, you and I both said that actually it was a blessing because it meant that you guys actually spent longer working out the menu that would be right for us, and everything kind of came together a bit more beautifully. Could I really quickly just ask you to let members know what you do? Just to give a bit of context. Hopefully they know what I do. But could you both introduce yourself a little bit and just say what you do? Because Brooke, I know particularly your day job's completely changed.
Yeah. So something I've heard Simon say so much throughout the last 8 months, 2 years is if he never thought in a million years that he'd be doing this. If anyone said, "Oh, you're going to be serving takeaway meals," a few years ago, he'd have laughed. So this time a few years ago, I'd been working at Lonclume. I had also been working at Henrock, which is the one with the new kid on the block. It's in Linthwaite House in Bowness. So we opened that in October 2019. After that, I sort of took a little bit of time away from the restaurants and have moved into the event side of things and do a lot of private dinners and things with Simon. And then, of course, that came to a very quick halt with the pandemic. And then it almost naturally sort of fell into, I was sort of struggling for things to do almost with no events to plan. And and takeaways started. They started really small. When we found out that we'd have to close the restaurants, all the chefs sort of got together with all their ingredients that they obviously had in their store cupboards and fridges, and they made these fantastic meals, really like stews and curries and just anything they could put together. And we sold them as little frozen £5 meals that initially we took round to the elderly, the vulnerable in the local area. Just to sort of look after everyone, because Simon's really sort of passionate about that. It can't means an awful lot to him. So sort of making sure everyone was okay. We were working really closely with the vicar, so he put us in contact with those that were sort of in need. So, and from there, and then after that, the sort of, I guess it became more well known. We got a little bit more momentum. We decided to do a bit more 3-course meals, where a little bit like a first product of what you're trying now. Really, they started off a little bit more basic. We were just delivering to the very local area, so nothing had to be DPD and courier safe. Lots of little dishes here and there, and it's evolved and developed to what it is now, where we do each week 3-course menus that we serve now nationwide. That's me really. We've now since the restaurants reopened back in May, obviously lost our little kitchen where we were doing everything from. We were doing everything from Lonclume, which is Simon's 2 Michelin star restaurant in Cartmel. And so we needed to find a space because we really felt passionate about this new venture, and it's something we're really proud of doing. So we've really happily, we've got a little unit just down the road from Cartmel. It's like 5 minutes down the road, where we now produce the meals from. And yeah, that's what we're on with most days. And Danny, you've sort of come along from the restaurant side as well.
Yeah, so it's just like Brooke said at the start, if someone said to me, I'll be doing this, like literally about 1 or 2 years ago, I would have just laughed and gone, there's no way I'll be doing something like this, because I started at Longclume. I worked at Longclume for 3 years. I started there about 7 years ago. I worked there when that's where I met Tom and Simon. So I worked there, really learnt the ethos of the restaurant, and I just fell in love straight away. It's just something I wanted to be a part of, and I stayed with the company for we're coming up to about 8 years next year. So a long-serving member, but you know, when you find something you love, you stay with it, and I don't want to let go. And they've really progressed me in my career. So I worked through Longclume for 3 years, learned all the little intricate details and all the really specialist techniques we did, and that was amazing. And then from there, I went and worked at Rogan and Co. And then I worked with Tom Barnes, who's the executive head chef of the group. So me and Tom, we've known each other for 7 years as well. And we were working there together with, I think it was only 2 other chefs at the time. And then we ended up winning and gaining a Michelin star within 6 months of the rebrand, with Tom in charge and the team there. And it was a five-person team at the time. So it was a really small team, and we had to work hard for it. And when you know you work hard for something that's in a small team, it means a lot. So that's something that we hold dear, and Simon's all about, obviously, those kind of accolades. And so it's something we hold dear and something we've helped gain, which we love. So that was a really interesting moment. And then obviously the pandemic hit, and the lady who was running the at-home meals was very heavily pregnant, and they needed someone else to take over. And Tom approached me and said, would you mind doing it? I was like, well, it gives me something to do, because I was just sat at home. And so then I went, did it, and then I was like, oh, this is a great venture. You can see it's got legs where we can take it. And I got to work with Brooke. She's a wonderful lady. So I really enjoy working with Brooke, which is great. We have a great partnership, I think, because even though we've both worked in the restaurant group for quite a similar amount of time, we've never worked together. So it's just like, it's quite nice now. We all know the old people who have worked in the group, so we can get along really well through that. And then just like Brooke said, like the venture that we now have, and we're serving what is essentially the same quality you would get in one of the restaurants you can have at home. And I think this is something that's really interesting. It's a new venture. It's an amazing idea, and you can see lots of other chefs doing it. Some people have stopped, but we think there's a real market here, and something we really want to just grow into something amazing and spectacular. And hopefully you guys will agree tonight when you eat with us. So,
absolutely. Oh, well, thank you both so much. And I mean, I have to say, I've done a few of these in lockdown, and this just absolutely blew my socks off. So I can't wait to do it again. But I must say, we've just had a comment, need more truffle pudding. Now, I haven't got it, so make me jealous. Tell me, Brooke, you said it's one of the absolute top favorite dishes. So tell me what makes that truffle pudding so special.
Yeah, go on, Danny.
Yeah, it's probably better for me.
The master of the truffle pudding.
Yeah, I think it's one of those staples that stayed throughout the group, and it's literally we would call them snacks. Just so we're all clear, when I mention snack, we know what it is. It's kind of a little canapé that everyone has. It's been in pretty much every single restaurant. They have little different versions when it goes that Longclume. They have like a Berkswell ones that they use different cheeses. But I think it's just the whole richness of it, but it's not too heavy, even though considering it has croissants in it. It has cream and eggs. So it's decadent though. It is a rich, and because they're so small though, and just that little bit of black garlic on the top, it just really adds to it. And I can see a few comments, some people really loving the black garlic on there. It's not a usual thing. I don't think you see in many places. So I think that's quite a nice thing about it. But it is a fantastic thing. It's one of the staples. that
Oh, well, you're making me deeply jealous. But I have to say, and just before we break to make the next course, because I'm conscious of time, and members, I will keep to time tonight because I know, you know, that's important. But I will say, of all the things you said, there was garlic in it, and garlic and truffle for me, an oak Chardonnay always works. And I'm going to immediately kick off once we've talked first course. I will kick off into why I think that works with Chardonnay. But I'm so glad, Danny, that you like the Chardonnay as well, because that was the only one I did blind, and I thought I think it's going to work. So I've seen a few members saying that it's worked, so that's giving me peace. But yes, on that note, it is time, members. We're going to get really hardcore into all of the dishes and the wines as soon as we get back from this break to help you cook along with us. So I think we've got a holding screen up, or we will have in a moment to show the breaks. We're going to allow you 15 minutes, which should give you enough time. During that time, if you can prepare your broth of sep, mushroom, egg yolk jam, and stout. Also, top up that Chardonnay for sure. So top up the Fest Parker Santa Barbara Chardonnay. And please do also pour your Dogliani as well, because I have planned it so that both will go with the first course. So without further ado, we're going to go off camera and mute. We'll leave this screen on just to remind you where you are and what you're doing. We will be on chat though, like I said. So if you have any questions, please shout, and we'll see you in 15 minutes. So thanks, Brooke and Danny. See you then.
Thank you. See you shortly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Lovely. We've got Brooke and Danny joining us again, perfectly promptly on time. I've got my set broth, which I'm really excited to hear about. And members, hopefully you have that, as well as the Chardonnay and the Dogliani that I will talk about once Brooke and Danny have given us a little introduction to the dish. I will also reiterate, Tim has just popped on the chat. If you're particularly proud of your plating this evening, we do love to see photos, because otherwise we just live in this little world of only us and our screens. So please feel free to send your photos to tastings@thewinesociety.com, or if you're a social media user, then please, pop them on social media and tag us. We'd love that. So anyway, without further ado, I'm excited to eat. So I'm going to hand over to Brooke and Danny to give us a few words on the first dish.
Oh, thank you so much, Anna. One thing that was the thing I liked the most about this dish, and I've actually learned a lot about since having it on the menu, actual varieties of mushrooms. What a perfect season. They are all around the local area, a little bit further afield as well, some even growing on our farm in Cartmel. So I just wondered if Danny might like to sort of talk us through some of the mushrooms. There's so many varieties, they've all got different textures, flavors, and he's actually prepared them in different ways. And we've got a little pot here, and maybe we can tell you about just a couple of them.
Yes.
Give you a little bit more information. All lovely English mushrooms.
So we've got a selection of mushrooms, like Brooke said, foraged from local area and cultivated and grown on the farm with our amazing farmer John. He recently, not too long, joined us.
Probably October.
And I think if anyone ever gets a chance to come down and have a farm time with that man, your passion will be like his passion for growing and growing vegetables, everything. It blew me away. I went down there the other week and it's incredible. But
he's a bit of a star of the show, I think, when he goes down. Everyone's we met John.
So mushrooms, anyway, let's get on with them. So we have some beautiful king oyster mushrooms, and they are cultivated and grown very local to the farm that we have, and they just add a real like meatiness because they're quite big, and that sort of like spongy texture can just absorb all of that lovely flavor which you'll get from the garlic and thyme as it roasts in the pan, and that will just absorb that, and that's the real key bit of that mushroom that's in there, and that's what that's there for. And so we also those are the slightly big ones. They're portioned up, like you would probably have that. That is that one. We also have some pickled shiitakes. The shiitake, we've pickled that one. It's a Tom Barnes classic. He loves to pickle the shiitake mushrooms, and he uses them in many dishes. And obviously, by pickling them, we bring acidity to the dish because we've got a lot of rich ingredients there. It can be quite heavy. So without that acidity there, it just clag everything down. So that acidity just lifts everything up. And the small little brown shiitake, very small. I don't know if it's easy to see. I'll hold it up anyway. That is there for the acidity. And then we also have some Shmiji mushrooms, sometimes called brown beach mushrooms. You get white and brown ones. There may be a mix in your boxes or not. Again, it's just about seasonality and what we can find. We don't strictly strive on we have to get that. We can get that. It means it's good. So that's why you'll have maybe a mix or certain different ones in there of them ones, and that will just add a great texture because it's quite firm and it holds up and it looks quite cute. I think it's a nice little stem. So that's that one. And then we also have some fermented king oyster mushrooms. Again, just like the other one, but we fermented it in salt using a technique which is it's lactic fermentation. So we just use salt and we leave it to ferment for a couple of weeks, and it creates this real sort of fermented, yeasty, acidic kind of mushroom, and you fry that off, and it adds just such a real depth that you don't get with anything else. So that's a great addition in there. You also have garlic, thyme, and butter, classic combination. They're in there to just impart classic flavors, and that's what we're about there. So those are the mushrooms.
When we were preparing the boxes to go out, the kitchen almost turned into like a woodland scene with all of these mushrooms just around that we're sort of portioning up and pickling, fermenting, and and then the soup as well. Yeah, so then what goes into that one?
Yeah, so we've got the mushroom broth that everyone warmed up and just poured over. So the mushroom broth we use from all the trimmings that we get from all these mushrooms. We dry them out. And then we make a mushroom stock. And then taking from that mushroom stock, we just use a little bit of butter, a little bit of milk, a little bit of cream. And that just, the intensity from drying out the mushrooms really imparts that sort of deep flavor you'll get that's in that broth. And there's not much really else to say. Like, it's just about zero waste. So that's why we use the dried mushrooms. So nothing goes to waste within this group. That's
true,
the whole ethos of it.
Oh yeah, another one of my favourite ingredients is
we have the smoked egg yolk jam. So we take egg yolks from the eggs, from the chickens, from the eggs, from the farm, and we take them. We have Warren's chickens down at the farm at the moment. Lovely little breed. We take their eggs. It's daily. We get about 60 eggs a day. We take them and we just pour a little bit of rapeseed oil and then we smoke them in our oven at work. We have a little smoking gun that sits in the bottom of the oven, and that just imparts a real smokiness flavor. And we use the oil because the oil is the flavor transport for the oaky wood smoked chips, and that just imparts all that smoky flavor. And then once they're smoked, we then confit them. We just basically take the egg yolks, steam them around 75 degrees till they're nice, just a little bit soft, and then we just whip it up into a nice little puree. That's what you have there. And then we have the stout vinegar. This is really interesting, in fact, because this is very local to Cartmel, because it's from Stout, which is made in the microbrewery, which is just in Unsworth Yard, which is directly in the heart of Cartmel, right behind Rogan & Co., which is the 1 Michelin star restaurant. And then we ferment that at the unit where I work on every day. So it couldn't be any more local. And we turn that into a vinegar using a SCOBY. A SCOBY is a living sort of bacteria, and it stands for a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. And you just put that into your vinegar and you just leave it, and it just loves living in a nice warm environment. And then after a few weeks, you'll just get a lovely vinegar. And then we reduce it down, impart a little bit of sugar so it's not too bitter. And then that sort of sweet bitterness helps cut through the richness of this dish. That is that one. And then to finish it off, texture. You got to have texture in a dish, otherwise what's the point? It'd just be a bit boring otherwise. Everything would just be one-dimensional. So we just have some really simple croutons. We just take the offcuts from the sourdough, which comes from Longclean restaurant. We just take that and then we just toast that in the oven. Again, a little bit of butter, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of thyme, keeping the classic flavors running throughout the dish. Not too many different flavors, so it doesn't get too confused in there. And then something nice, little crisp, little texture to enjoy on the top.
Oh, delicious. I mean, I have to say, so Brooke and Danny sent me these kits, and you sent it to me right at the beginning of the month so that I could choose the wines. And I was working, obviously, it sounds lovely, but I was working doing all the wine tastings. So I've got, various wines on the table and I'm writing notes. And my husband it was a really warm day, so he had his outside, and he just walked in afterwards and said, "That is the best soup I have ever eaten." So I thought, right, we're on to a winner then. So, but yes, it really is a really very, very pleasant dish. And at first I was a bit worried when you sent it, the list of ingredients. I thought, oh my goodness, that's a lot going on. But one member, Mark, has already picked up on the really overriding thing that I get from this, and that's the umami flavors and those lovely earthy notes. And there are very few wines in the world that I think go with umami as well as without throwing my weight around too much. But the two I've chosen are definitely umami friendly. They're foodie wines, and sometimes umami can not be a friend of wine, but in this case I hope to members it is. So we'll tell you a little bit about each of the wines. The first wine is a wine from Santa Barbara in California. I knew I needed it to go with the truffle as well, but again, that's slightly an umami flavor, so there was a synergy, and I knew I needed something ideally oaked. It's just here for you, the Fess Parker. Generally, oaked wines it can be a range of things that come from oak, but this particular wine has that smoke and that toast, and I think that makes a really nice marriage with the croutons and also the smokiness. You talked about the smoke gun. I mean, I wouldn't have known there was a smoke gun, but there we go. I'm glad there is a smokiness in the flavour, so it certainly goes with the smokiness of the wine. There is also a sweetness, and I think that sweetness as well is a lovely almost a little boxing partner to the umami. It's not too much of a savory wine. There's that lovely sort of there's a sweetness from the oak, but also sweetness from the grape variety as well. Now, the other thing that this does pack, and it's quite important, is acidity. You mentioned, Danny, you wanted the acidity, you got it through the vinegar. I think when you're pairing particularly broths, creamy broths, you do need a wine that has enough acidity to not make it cloying. And I guess a lot of people might think of Californian Chardonnay as big, bold, fruity juices. But I was lucky enough to visit Santa Barbara in 2017, I think thereabouts. And I have to say, since then, I have been the biggest fan. They talk about a cooling influence in Santa Barbara from the Pacific Ocean. And I cannot tell you, it's being stood in Santa Barbara is like having natural air conditioning. And for me, that was for a Pinot Noir and Chardonnay lover, Santa Barbara has sort of become my spiritual home. I'm pretty sure, I'm going to put it out there, there might not be a wine region in the world I adore quite so much now, actually, as Santa Barbara. So for me, it was a no-brainer to have a Santa Barbara Pinot, because you will still get that lovely fresh acidity. I will mention Sideways. I've mentioned Sideways day before yesterday, the 2004 film. But if anybody has or hasn't seen Sideways, it's about two blokes going around California, but in particular, they're going around Santa Barbara. So if you haven't seen it, wine tasting, I should say as well, or wine is certainly one of the themes. So if you haven't seen it, it will give you a lovely idea about what Santa Barbara is all about. But this particular wine is produced by Fess Parker. And Fess Parker, if that name rings a bell to some members, you're not mistaken. He was a famous TV actor, sadly passed away a few years ago, but he was very famous in the 50s and 60s, a Texan man. And I think his daughter is famed with saying he never does anything in small measures. So he started in the late 80s with a sort of, I think, 5 acres of vineyards as a bit of a project, probably to make his own wine for consumption. And then his Texas traits got the better of him. He went big, he went bold. The Fess Parker estate is now over 700 hectares, rather than acres, sorry. But there's a restaurant and a spa, and he's really gone for it. But the quality hasn't dropped. And actually, they make some incredible wines. This particular one was fermented in barrels, so 100% in an oak barrel for the ferment. And then what that does is it changes the texture slightly, so you get that rich, unctuous flavor that I think goes really well with the dish, because you have got the richness. But then they took the wine and for 7 months put it into Hungarian and French oak barrels. And those, some new, so you are getting those smoky flavors coming through. But certainly, it's not a wine that's been sat on oak for 3, 4, 5 years, or it's still young, it's still vibrant, very fresh. So for me, it's kind of got a little bit of everything. For members who are tasting along, quite appley, quite biscuity, which is a lovely thing that comes from sitting sometimes on the lees cells. And I think sometimes that biscuit thing goes with bread too, yeasty almost. And then there is oak, that toast, oak, smoke, vanilla. It's creamy, but not cloying. So for me, it's very much got, sometimes you match wine with dishes, and sometimes you make dishes work against, or make wine work against dishes for fun. And for me, this is almost like a marriage. This is a real, I've tried to match the texture, I've tried to match the flavors, I've tried to match the richness, the intensity. The only, and this is a very small statement, but I actually originally tried the dishes with the 2018 vintage. And the only thing I would say is the 2019 is lovely. And actually, this was a fantastic year. One, other than some awful fires, but in California in particular, it's a brilliant vintage. So the vintage itself is fantastic. But if you do decide you like this wine, members, I would lay it down for a year. I think 1 extra year, it will gain a bit of that umami flavor. So it would go with the dish even better. but quite frankly, still delicious. But you could lay this down for longer if you wanted, but just adding a year or two, you might start to get some more savory notes. And Chardonnay can go a little bit mushroomy, so you never know, you might end up with a sort of real match made in heaven. Before I move on to the Dogliani, actually, I'd love to hear, because Danny, you said you were a fan of Chardonnay. Brooke, I don't know if you were quite so convinced, but yeah, I'd like to hear what you both think.
Oh, we're split over here, aren't we?
Yeah, split, yeah.
Obviously, Danny is a big fan of the Chardonnay. I'm just really interested with Dogliani. Really, really not what I would have chosen. So it's really refreshing.
And so you're going for the Dogliani, Brooke, and Danny's sticking with the Chardonnay. Okay.
Yeah.
Very diplomatic of you. So on that note, it's worth going on to it. And I think members, hopefully, if you have got both poured, do feel free to go for it now. Finding a red that went with both courses was actually a little bit harder. I really wanted to find an approachable red, but something that was food friendly, and that would sort of take us through the stages and get us ready to go into the main course. The obvious choice for me, if I'm honest, was Pinot Noir or Chenin Mavro or something along those lines. And I tried them and nothing quite worked. And I was really struggling to work out why it wouldn't work. I knew I needed that acidity that we just spoke about. I wanted it to be refreshing to cut through the creaminess of the dish. But for some reason, I think if I'd said to members, let's all spend £90 and get a Premier Grand Cru Burgundy, then it might be a different story. But the young Pinots and the young sort of lighter styles of wine I was looking at, a lot of them didn't have enough savory to them, and they were real fruit bombs. And I appreciate this is a fruity wine, but it's definitely got other things going on there. Sarah's note here says a hint of graphite. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure we're not all in the business of going around eating graphite, but the thing it reminds me of is chewing on the end of a pencil. And because of that, it's got a bit more complexity. So I knew it needed to be approachable. I didn't want to break everyone's budget by going Premier or Grand Cru. Well, we could do that another time, though, members. If you're keen, I'm keen. But I think the other thing is everyone has their blind spot, and my blind spot in wine is often Italian, and I just don't think of it quick enough. And I suddenly thought, hold on, where would I in the world eat mushroom risotto? And I just thought, well, it's obvious it has to be Piedmont, and truffles as well. So I have chosen a wine from the Piedmont region, but it's not a Barolo, not a Barbaresco. I didn't want to go too big. I really did want something a bit more sort of easy drinking. And this particular wine, the Dogliani, is from the same Langhe area as its very famous brothers, Barolo and Barbaresco, or sisters, or whatever you want to call them. Probably the most prestigious and most renowned region in Italy. But those wines need a lot of age and they need a lot of work. And I wanted something young and friendly. And this wine's actually made from the Dolcetto grape, which I believe, I'm not sure if it's a misnomer, but I believe it translates as little sweet one, which I think is a huge misnomer because yes, there's some sweet fruits, but this actually can be a very, very tannic wine, often so tannic that it becomes unbalanced. Whereas this particular producer is very good at managing the tannins and making sure that they're not too intense. So he's considered one of the masters of the variety. For anyone who knows the composer, Ludovico Einaudi, it is made by his cousin, but it's actually a very, very famous family in the region. Their grandfather was the first democratic president of Italy. So, or prime minister, no, it is president. So very famous family in the region. It's a mix of old and young vines. So some are planted as late back as 1941. So they won't give you a huge amount of fruit. They'll give you this really intense concentration. So you've got the best of both worlds here. You've sort of got the young fruity stuff mixed with this really, really concentrated old vines. And the way this particular wine is made is it goes into stainless steel tanks for 8 months. So they don't put it in oak. and then they put it into bottle. So it's designed to be kept fresh and fruity, but it's the grape variety that's adding those sorts of slightly more savory notes. It's not oak, it's not manipulative winemaking in any way. It's just really, really good winemaking, making sure they haven't taken out too much of that bitter tannin that can sometimes come from dolcetto, and instead made a very, very, in my opinion, drinkable red wine. It's earthy without being funky. It's black fruits. It's a little bit spicy. So yeah, it should hopefully go with both courses. What do you guys think?
Yes, very much. Yeah.
So Brooke's on board.
I am on board with this one.
It's
Persuading Danny.
Yeah,
actually.
as it's going on, it's winning me over. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It was I think of all of them, in terms of finding a wine that went across both, I think it was the hardest pairing for me. Yeah, to find something that had both of those elements, that could be rich enough but not overpowering, because it needs to be rich enough to go for the next course but not too overpowering for this course. So I wanted a wine that went with both, but it was a challenge. So I'm glad you like it, Brooke. I think there's some other people split in their households as well, which they prefer. So that's great. I mean, thank you both so much. We are ready now to go on to the next course. For members as well at home, I should say, don't worry about writing too many notes, etc. We can send you the PDFs of the wine, and then we can also, if you have any more questions and you want a little bit more information, you can always email me tomorrow and I can get into the nitty-gritties of the wine. But I'm conscious this is a convivial evening. My tummy is rumbling for the next course. So we're going to pop our next holding screen up to allow you to top up your Dogliani if you are enjoying it, to pour your Chateauneuf de Pape, and then to also get your final course, not final course, but your final savoury course ready, as it were. But your beef short rib ready. I'm so excited because this is a fabulous course, but it does take a little bit of effort. So good luck. And if you have any questions, Brooke and Danny will be here to help.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Hello and welcome back. Hi members and hi Brooke and Danny. That is it's a tricky course to get ready on time, I know. So I'm certainly not going to rush immediately into asking you right at this moment at 10 minutes past to tell us about the dishes. But I do just want to remind members to please pop some questions into the Q&A button. We'd love to hear from you. We do, as I've said, have time allotted for questions at the end of the session. And I will also say, for those of you who ordered the additional cheese, we've put some time aside at the end to go through cheeses and also the wines I would suggest to go with each of the cheeses, because I know that that was an option if you wanted to add them. So that's at the end for anyone who added it on as an additional. So I think without further ado, mine has arrived, delivered by Husband Airways. So mine has arrived. I'm absolutely thrilled. He was a little flustered, but no, I'm delighted he's in the kitchen doing some work. Oh, I've just had a member ask if we can have a few more minutes. Yeah, absolutely. That's not a problem. I'll give it a couple more minutes. We have allowed actually extra time in this session because we thought it might be a bit trickier to cook. So we have allowed a little more time. But whilst we wait, I would quite like to hear, I don't know whether, Brooke, Danny, is there another argument going on about which of these two wines you like?
Well, Chateauneuf now.
Yeah.
Firmly in that.
I'm enjoying it. I am enjoying the Chateauneuf de Pape. So.
Oh, there we go. So there's less arguing now. Fair enough. No, I'm excited to talk about that wine. For any members that don't know as well, coincidentally, I'm actually in the Rhone at the moment. My family live out here, so I have come to work events plus doing the grape harvest. So funnily enough, I'm probably, I went to Muscat de Bombe de Venise today because I had the wrong Muscat. So I went to the producer to pick up the correct wine, which is brilliant. Not often you can do that. Went to the cellar door and picked that up today. So I'm about 20 minutes from Muscat and from Bombe de Venise, sorry, not from Muscat. And then I'm about 25 minutes the other way to Chateauneuf de Pape. So it's a coincidence, and I will tell you a little bit later about why I picked two Rhone wines, but it is a complete coincidence that I'm here during this event, but it's quite nice to know that I'm sort of surrounded by what we're about to taste for the next two wines as well. It makes me happy to feel part of it. It's also why I've got the Vin de Côte de Rhône map behind me as well, because I'm working out of a makeshift office, but what a lovely makeshift office it is, surrounded by, it's harvest at the moment, so there's literally tractors everywhere, grapes. Obviously I'm doing a bit of that myself, but right outside the front of our drive today, somebody had accidentally spilt quite a few red grapes, which was sad, but just made you feel completely a part of the world of wine to have a pile of grapes land by your front door. Slightly different to my normal life in Essex, but yes, that's why I'm here, for members who are recognising a different background. So I think we should crack on. Brooke and Danny, I'm really excited to hear about this. I'm also really excited to eat. So completely selfishly, I'd love to hear a little bit about this dish, about the components, and over to you guys.
Oh, thank you so much. So this one, I think really sort of really shows a lot about almost why we do what we do, because at home, I think it's not a lot of people have almost as much time as they might like to put into creating such sort of intricate dishes, and we sort of thought really what we do is allow people to eat sort of restaurant style and standard food by taking away all those sort of laborious tasks, because as Danny's going to explain, the beef element itself, well that's over 24 hours. How long does that take in total?
I'll talk you through the beef. So the short rib of Dexter beef that everyone's got, what we do is we brine it, and then after we've brined it, we then sous vide it and cook it for 24 hours. And we cook that at 70 degrees. So obviously not everyone wants to have something on cooking for that length of time. And then once we've actually cooked it, then we press it. The idea of pressing it is to all those lovely meat fibers that we've cooked for a long time, they become lovely and soft. We want to press that to compress all that meat so it doesn't fall apart. So we have that nice solid piece of meat, but it's still soft and tender, which is obviously really important. So we're probably talking a 48-hour process before this is ever ready. So it is a long process. And when we buy the beef in, it also comes with bones on it on the back, because it is a short rib. And what we do is we take them bones and we roast them in the oven, and then we make a beef stock. And then from that beef stock, we make the sauce that everyone's got. So we've got a real sort of intense, meaty kind of sauce, which if you've got the truffle supplement, you're adding that into the sauce, really that earthiness really complement the beef in there. And then while we're still on the page of using up other parts of the animal, we have some confit beef fat potatoes. And the beef fat is from the trim of the Dexter beef. So when we get the beef in, we'll take off any excess fat, and then we'll render it down just a nice slow sort of temperature. And then that just extracts all that lovely fattiness that comes from the beef. And then we'll just put that into a vacuum bag and confit them potatoes until they're lovely and soft. You know, we don't want a hard potato, something lovely and soft in there. So again, no waste. It's very important to us. It's at the heart of our restaurants and our ethos, and what Simon really likes. And then if we're on what Simon really likes, everyone should have a nice little pot of our farm cresses. This is something that's really important. Anything we do involves the farm 100%. And I think the most amazing thing for me is from when 7 years ago I started at Cartmel, I saw the farm and how it looked, and the development of that farm. And we used to get a small amount of vegetables and small amount of variety, but now, the amount is incredible. Like, we can get anything we want whenever we want it. And we tell John, he plants it, he grows it. So these are very important, and Simon will love seeing everyone use them. So that is very important to everyone, which I just wanted to mention and just really just hammer home how important they are to us, our farm cresses. And then we've got a little bottle of garlic and chili oil. So it's to really lift the dish. We've got something that's, garlic goes great with all these other flavors on there. And then a little bit of chili, which is a bit unusual. The chili flavor in there just adds a bit of heat, not too much heat. And that just cuts through anything else in there that you might find. It's sometimes used in the Rogan & Co menu. So again, a lot of these dishes, they're based on menus that me and Tom did together at Rogan & Co. And we've just taken them and we've gone, this is great for home cooking. So garlic chili oil, something that I don't think anyone's really ever had before. It's quite interesting. And then for the whole dish, acidity, you got some lovely pickled onions. We get some nice small silver skin onions, which come from our farm. And then we just pickle that in just a simple little pickle recipe, which Simon has. A little bit of a secret. If anyone wants to come up and learn it, they're more than welcome to. We'll take on anyone. And then we can teach you that. So some lovely pickled silver skin onions, which come directly from our farm also.
I just wondered if I could sort of give you an idea of the size of the farm. It's really growing. It's getting bigger and bigger year on year, actually, I think. And John, the farmer, has managed to squeeze in more beds than, I don't know how he's managed it. There's not a single patch that's unused at the moment. And we've just harvested, was it 10,000 cabbages? Yeah,
10,000 cabbages.
Just to give you an idea of sort of, it's huge.
It's a big production.
And although John really can use the space, so many, and they are going into, they're all being fermented, aren't they? So preparing for winter, really.
That's what we're getting ready for.
So winter dishes, we're still able to use produce from the farm by preserving it, and but I just couldn't believe it when I heard Simon saying, John, I'm going to need 10,000 cabbages, please, for my winter menu. It was
a bit of a crazy moment when we saw it. But it just fills you with a lot of passion and pride. It's like, this is what drives chefs forward. This whole ethos.
But John absolutely, he's
done it. Can grow it. It's amazing. Yeah.
I'm proud of my own veggie patch. It's sort of a lockdown initiative, but the idea of having to grow something, that it's terrifying. The idea that you have to grow it. I find so much gardening is a risk to me. It's really scary. So gardening to order must be even more terrifying.
Yeah, yeah, and you want it to be perfect for the chefs. They know that the gardeners know what is expected of them, and what can go on the plate and what sort of doesn't make
Absolutely.
the cut. Yes.
Really quickly, I think we might be missing the shallots still, because that's one of my favorite bits, but we have had a question from Roger saying, where does the beef come from?
Okay, so the beef, we work with many suppliers across the UK. We don't just trap ourselves to Cumbria. As Simon once said to me, it would be quite silly to just focus on one area if you can get something better from somewhere else, because obviously Simon has restaurants now worldwide. We have a restaurant in Hong Kong also. And a couple of years ago, we tried some beef from a butcher called Philip Warren. He's down in Devon. And he's got these lovely Dexter beef down there, and they sent some up, and it was incredible. So yeah, the Dexter beef comes from down in Devon. So that's where we get it from Philip Warren. Amazing butcher, amazing quality meat. And the inspiration why we wanted to use Dexter beef also was the farm, the land just around it, and the farmer he's sort of just north of the farm. He has some Dexter beef there, and I remember Simon down there one day. He saw them and he was like, he started creating ideas. That's the kind of man he is, and he's just like, Dexter beef, I want some of them. And so then that's how that took off. So from down in Devon is the short answer there.
Thank you. And then
I do apologise.
Cornwall.
I do
Cornwall.
Yeah, you are correct. I do apologise about that.
That's all right, but certainly not Cumbria.
No, it's not
the
Cumbria.
other end. And then yes, I think there was, I could be wrong, but one of my favourite components of the dish, the shallot.
Oh, shallot, yeah.
Yes.
So we've got a caramelized shallot puree. So the great thing about this is you can caramelize vegetables quite far more than meat, and you can get a real sweetness from it. Because basically, if you take meat too far, it just ends up burning and going bitter. But vegetables, they've just got so much give. You can just keep cooking it slowly and slowly, and it just creates a lovely sort of caramelized flavor without it going bitter and burnt, but you will get a bit of sweetness and bitter there. So the caramelized shallot puree, it just complements everything on that dish, and I think it just brings the whole dish together. Sort of like, I think that's what purees are great for in dishes, just to bring everything together and around. Because you've just got a puree that just doesn't bring anything. It's just like, why is it there? So I think that's the great thing about the caramelized shallot puree that's on there.
And that's my other thing I love about purees, is doing what I was about to do. If I weren't on camera, I would be doing it, which is the finger scrape on the plate.
Yeah.
But I'll resist until the end of the evening. But yeah, that's the other lovely thing about purees. Wonderful. So thank you, guys. I have to say, I think this dish is absolutely gorgeous. We've had a couple of people mentioning how complex it is, and I think that's really the main thing that came away with from my first tasting of it. It's one of those dishes that on paper you think it's going to be one thing, and then when it arrived it tasted really quite different. And so whilst I would say that the dishes, well, I mentioned I had some problems with pairings earlier, I actually just got this one completely wrong. So I had in my head what I thought it was going to be. So I bought in various wines that I thought would work. So I tried I tried two Bordeaux actually. Tried a left bank and a right bank Bordeaux. And the right bank was a little bit better, but my Margaux didn't have enough fruit. And actually, this dish is very rich, but it is really, there's this sort of sweetness and I think particularly from the shallots. And it essentially made the Margaux taste quite austere. I tried New World and Old World Pinot Noirs. I mentioned I'd obviously tried them with the previous dish as well, and they didn't have enough body. I tried Cassara from the Lebanon, but the fruit was too dark, and I felt like this needed a more red fruit, or at least some red fruit to marry these flavors. So I wanted to have something grown up. I knew that, and I needed something hearty. But I tried all of those things and none of them worked. And I sat there and I had my final wine was a 100% Syrah from the Northern Rhone. And I tasted it and I thought, I'm nearly there. I'm not quite, but I'm nearly there. There's something about Syrah that brings this sort of pepperiness, maybe a bit of almost garlic, certainly a herbaceous note. And I was like, Syrah's working, but it needs more. And it's only going to come from a blend. I need a wine that is so complex because it's been blended with several grape varieties. And so I actually dug into my own cellar and found a Rhone, Côte de Rhone Village Roex. And I thought, this is nearly it. It's nearly it. And so I just, it had to be something like a Chateauneuf de Pape. So I'm glad that members are already saying they're enjoying it on the chat, particularly because it was, my brain didn't go there. I think it's you often avoid the things that you know the most or drink a lot of, and I just hadn't considered it. So I was a little bit nervous to use it, but I'm so glad because I really do think it has enough oomph, but certainly a decent amount of complexity as well. So in terms of the region of Chateauneuf de Pape, I'll tell you a little bit about that and then go on to the wine as well. Chateauneuf de Pape is famous for a few things. One of them is the name. Chateauneuf de Pape is fun to say, the new home of the Pope, when the Pope was based in Avignon. But it's also famous for being the birthplace of the AOC system, so the Appellation Contrôlée system, whereby wines are protected by a region with certain rules under them. Now, I will say I'm working in a small appellation in the Rhone for the harvest. Chateauneuf de Pape, sort of the king of the region, should we say, or certainly the one that everyone knows. And it's also the one with the loosest regulations in terms of grapes you can blend. So there are actually 18 grape varieties allowed in Chateauneuf, or certainly varieties in their various colours. And there is a lot more flexibility. So what that does mean is you get very complex wines with lots of varieties used, sometimes in bigger quantities, smaller quantities. Sometimes they're just very complex because it's 100% really good Grenache. But you are allowed a lot more components. And I think that really attracted me to the idea of Chateauneuf de Pape because of the components in this dish. Most producers wouldn't go for the full hog, 18. There are a few that give it a good go. Most producers maximum would go for about 4 or 5. And in terms of the dominant variety, it is Grenache. So it's not Syrah like the Northern Rhone. Syrah is usually second fiddle, but with global warming, potentially more likely varieties like Mourvèdre, who's also a sun worshipper, might start taking over a little bit from the Syrah. But Grenache gives this beautiful, and this is a Grenache dominant wine, and it does give this beautiful sort of soft tannin texture. And with this beef, I think the main learning I'm getting at the moment is that texture is so important in wine and food matching. And for me, that sort of silkiness of the wine actually goes incredibly well with exactly what you described, Danny, which is that silky, soft, it's like compressed but melt in the mouth feeling of the beef. And I love how those two textures work together in this particular wine. It does like the sunshine, very fortunate in the Southern Rhone. It grows beautifully well here. The alcohols do get high, so they tend to be a little bit juicy. What we don't want is for it to be jammy. So that's where all the other grape varieties added in tend to bring rein it in a bit, because Grenache can get almost port-like if you really let it do its thing in the heat. And Chateauneuf de Pape in particular has this beautiful big gallet stones, which are pudding stones, they call them, these big rocks that reflect the sunlight. So in Chateauneuf de Pape, the Grenache you're getting is even warmer and even more sort of rich and indulgent. So this wine is a family winery founded by, I think they call him grand-père, but the great-grandchildren currently own the estate. It's not a huge wine estate, but actually in Chateauneuf de Pape, there aren't actually that many huge ones. It's not a massive area. But what's very interesting about this wine is they grow, or this producer, I should say, is they have 43 hectares, but they're spread over 40 different plots. And this wine is a blend of different plots. So they're taking different terroirs, different soils, different aspects. So some sunnier sites, some less sunny. And this is it really is a blend, proper blend. And I've mentioned grape varieties, so let's go through them. We've got Grenache, and that's the majority. Syrah, like I said, in second fiddle, Mourvedre, the sun worshipper, Sanso, which makes fabulous rosé, but is also really good on those warmer soils. And then interestingly, the fifth variety in this wine is a grape called Quinoa. And Quinoa is of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, only 0.5% of plantings. And considering it's not really permitted anywhere else, it's grown in tiny, tiny quantities. Producers that produce Quinoa say they use it because it adds a little bit of pepper, a little bit of color, a little bit of pepper, but not too much color and not too much tannin. So you've got other varieties to do that, like your Syrah. So this is more of that peppery, if anybody's getting that on their nose. We had a great tasting yesterday with Emma Symington, MW, and she said that black pepper, 1 in 5 people is, I was about to say agnostic, that's not the right word, anostic, cannot smell black pepper. So if you're not getting it, don't worry. You might be one of those 1 in 5 people, but for me, it does have that little pepperiness. Grenache and Syrah can give a bit of pepper too. So there is that. In terms of how it's produced, you might expect, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, it's an old sort of fashioned region. Maybe they're going to be using oak barrels. No, this producer does produce some oak-aged wine, but this one is 12 months in concrete or cement vats. And what that does is it serves to preserve freshness in the wine. I mentioned that Grenache can get boozy, almost port-like. So 2019 was very warm vintage, really, really hot. But for reasons that are confusing a lot of people, the pH is low of the wines. The acidity has remained high. Some people are putting it down to sort of a really long but not very up and down growing season in 2019. Other people are making other various judgments, and I certainly don't know enough about weather patterns and vintages to know, and I don't think anyone does, but it's not been aged in oak. It's not had those sort of like jammy flavors exaggerated. I believe it was fermented in oak barrels, but that's just the fermentation taking place. The aging certainly hasn't done. So we're not expecting to get too much of the sweet spice flavor. What we do have for me is the peppery spice. So we've got white pepper and black pepper. Lovely red fruits. And the thing that Châteauneuf and a lot of the Southern Rhone crews do for me is they add that herbaceous note. And I think we've talked about the thyme and the herbs going into this. Thyme, both herbal and temporal. So both elements of thyme. But all of the herbs that go into this, the sort of slightly nuanced flavors, really important. But that red fruit for me, and the reason I pushed you, Danny, on the shallots in particular, that red fruit, a little bit of black fruit, but mainly the red fruit, really adds a sweetness. And I think if you have that really lovely caramelized flavor, what a lot of what I would call serious wines were failing to do, your Bordeaux or my Casara Lebanese Syrah and Cabernet blend, they didn't have enough sweetness. They weren't fruity enough. So whilst this is a really serious wine, it's still really fruity. And that allows it to work really well with the pureed shallots in particular, which I find this lovely, rich, sweet, gorgeous flavor. If you wanted to know as well, this is a producer converting to organic production. So they're sort of very focused on the earth, the land, much like a lot of the producers you guys work with, Brooke and Danny. There's a real provenance about them as well, and a family business, which I think is always really nice. So let me know what you think. Brooke, Danny, you both sort of mentioned just before we rejoined officially that it might be your favorite wine. Is it still your favorite wine, both of you?
I'm really enjoying it. I don't try many wines. This is probably, I think, the second time I've tried Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and I'm really enjoying this, and I'm picking up all the notes along that you're going with, and I think it's fantastic. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. And I'm just absolutely, I love that you're there as well.
yeah, in the home.
Yeah. How long are you in for?
I'm going to try and do as much of the harvest as possible, but it will be, I'll be leaving towards the end of October.
Right.
Sad, but I'm needed back at Stevenage HQ, so I can't stay away forever. But I have to say, Tracy Saunders, and I apologize, I've mentioned the beef a lot, but obviously I know some of you do have the veggie main as well. And Tracy has said that the soft fruit is offsetting the acidity of the pickles and the garlic. And I completely agree, Tracy, whether you've got the veggie or the non-veggie option. I really do think that soft, slightly sweet fruit. And I'm not talking sugary, we're not talking port here. We're just talking about sweet tasting fruit. I really do think that offsets it beautifully. But yeah, it was I couldn't believe how wrong I'd got it. I really couldn't. It was one of those things. It's why sommeliers are so essential, because you can read a menu and you can think you know what's going to go with it, but you've never tasted the dish before, and that sommelier will have tried it many, many times and they'll know exactly what works. So yeah, it just goes to show it's not always what you think the right answer is going to be. But that's the beauty of food and wine matching. I think that's what makes it so fun. Experimentation, and quite frankly, some of those wines that I tried might have genuinely been a preferred choice for somebody else, you know, because we're not all the same. But for me, this stole the show, so I had to include it. Okie dokes. So that actually does take us to our next break. We've got time now to make the pudding. The pudding's a bit of a funny one, isn't it? Because it takes 20 minutes or so. Well, it will take 20 minutes for it to be ready. But obviously it's a very easy one to prepare because Danny's done all the work for us. So what I would suggest to members, it's a bit of a strange holding screen we're going to put on now. You're welcome to come back and join us in 10 minutes, so at 1:45, where Brooke, Danny and I will be here for a very optional Q&A. Or if you want to wait, then at 55 past, so at 5:29, that's when we're going to kick off and go into the pudding and Muscat de Baume de Venise pairing. So totally up to you which you prefer to do, but obviously without fail, I would recommend finishing up these wines, enjoy them, and then get ready and prepared for the final pairing. So we'll see you, Brooke and Danny, I'll see you at 1:45, and members will either see you here or we'll see you at 55 past. So cheers.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Hello everyone and welcome back. I have, if you are joining us, I've poured myself a glass of the very, very exciting. It's one of my new favorites, to be honest. Yeah, so I've got pardon me, I'm too excited about it, of Domaine de Bernardin. So very excited about tasting that, but I'm going to refrain and wait until I've got 9 minutes before I can probably taste it. But in the meantime, we have had some questions through, and also we have got some questions over email as well. So I'm going to start, Brooke and Danny, with a question that we had over email, which is to both of you, one by one, please. What would be your desert island dish?
Do you want to go first, not me?
Do you know?
I know
feel
mine.
You must get
I know
asked this
mine.
quite often as a chef. Go on.
And mine's really simple. Mine is quite simply an onion soup. One of two varieties.
Oh my.
Either a white onion soup or a French onion soup. I just think it's amazing. It's just one of the greatest things I've ever eaten. You think you get all these meals, these amazing things, but nothing just brings you down to earth and keeps you grounded like an onion soup. It's incredible. So that's what it is for me. I'll probably have to go for a French onion soup and then probably a white onion soup, but onion soup. Simple as that.
Answer. I have to say, yeah, nothing beats it. Although I'm the sort of person that packs on the I've got a fly in my head, sorry. I'm the sort of person that packs on the cheesy croutons on top. Are you one of those, Danny?
Yeah. I love loads of Gruyere on there.
Yes.
I do love a good Gruyere cheese.
Exactly.
It's incredible. Yeah.
And Brooke, how about you? You going fancier than an onion soup?
As a chocoholic, I think I'd probably say of the chocolate fondant that we do. That's another Rogan and Company recipe.
You ate one yesterday, actually, didn't you?
We did have one yesterday, yeah. But apart from that, I love sort of Asian Thai food as well. I'm a huge fan of all the sort of lemongrass and ginger and sort of coriander. I love all those sort of flavor profiles as well. So anything sort of, I love a curry as well.
Wonderful. Oh, well, actually, that's sort of, you nearly answered another question that we had submitted, which was for anybody who is traveling to one of the Simon restaurants, which dish on any of the menus of any of the restaurants would be your recommendation?
Oh, that's a difficult one because the menu, it changes so quickly. Like actually today we was at Rogan & Co earlier. We were doing some wines, wasn't we, earlier? And they were introducing 4 new dishes on the menu today. So it changes a lot. I'm trying to think of some of my favorites over the years. I would have to say Long Clume, there's a little snack that you get when you arrive. I'm pretty sure it's still on the menu now. It's sort of like a pork and eel kind of fritter, I guess is the best way to describe it. So it's a confit pork belly cooked for 12 hours, I think. Could be wrong on that. It's a long time since I worked there. 12 hours, and then they dice that and they mix it with some smoked eel. And then it gets panade. Panade, I'll just explain, is a technique for putting like breadcrumb around sort of an item, is the best way to describe it, in what's called an onion tapioca. Onion tapioca, if we thought the beef was a long process, the onion tapioca is a 5-day process. So I remember from my time there, it was a very big job.
So worth it.
Yeah, it's extremely worth it. And that's just deep fried, and it's, people use the word melt in the mouth. That is it. You eat one of them, it's incredible.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that's developed as well. I remember when I worked there, it was served, I think, on ham fat, that's it. Yeah. And now it's served on a lovely lovage emulsion with some tiny little dots of
fermented sweet corn.
Fermented sweet corn on top. So that's it. Yeah, it's fantastic. And I think I agree with Danny as well. The Long Clume snacks, just what a way to start a meal. Just an explosion, like really.
I think that's what really sets Long Clume apart, like from anywhere else, in my opinion. My opinion, like the snacks you get there are nothing like any other restaurant in the country.
There's what else have they got on at the moment? We've got this amazing tart with gooseberry and I think, and lobster is fantastic. So you start with that, and then you've got the smoked eel and pork. It's just fantastic. And then as well, that in the running there, often you'll find a truffle pudding or a variation of again, and they're just absolutely stunning little stars, and all just one bite. When you put them down on the table, you've always got to mention to the guests, please do put it all in one. Get it all. No cutlery or anything. Just pick it up and enjoy it straight away. The long cream snacks, I think, are quite stand out. It's my favourite things that I've had from those restaurants.
We've got a member or two members, and apologies if I mispronounce this, Jamie and Aidan, saying, man, those long cream snacks are so good. So you've already got some converts. We've got a couple of questions actually from David and Dawn. I'll start with the first one that they asked, which is, what is the dish that you like cooking the most and why? So not just eating. What do you enjoy to cook?
I think for me, it's a vegetable. We had this discussion a few years ago, like, what's your favorite job in the kitchen? And it took me a while. Like, some people had like you'd be amazed, like some chefs, they just enjoy really simple jobs. Like my head chef at the time, he was like, I love prepping baby turnips. I was just like, baby turnips, like, really? And it took me a long time, and I was like, I think mine's cauliflower. And like, again, like, you can find so much joy in the most simple of things. I think that is something that we've all grown to love, like working with Simon. Like, we take a vegetable and transform it into something that's incredible. So for me, like, cooking a cauliflower, I just enjoy roasting it in a pan, and you just watch those colors change. So you see, you create a beautiful golden brown on the outside, and as you baste it and begin to foam it, you can just watch them colors change. And I think that's a real enjoyment of cooking. And it's really, like, when you see a chef do that, you can see his passion involved. So I would say, for me, cauliflower.
Love that answer. We've had two unexpected answers from Danny. Brooke, do you have anything you like to cook in particular?
I think less cooking. I'm not trusted in the kitchen as much, actually, but a lot of the vegetables are just anything that comes from the farm, and just seeing how often they're really not tampered with and not played with at all. They just allow the vegetables to completely sing on their own, and they're often dishes that really, they do celebrate that particular item. But then as well, you can do so many things. Like a carrot at Long Clume will be the most carroty tasting carrot. And the way they sort of do it, sort of cook it in the carrot juices, don't they, just to bring out even more, intensify those flavors. And you just think, how on earth have they done that? It's fantastic. But yeah, I think as well, just having the access to the farm as well. Yeah, it has to be all the vegetarian and vegetables that we're so lucky to have such fantastic, beautiful, fresh produce every day. Yeah, it's lovely.
Fab. And now we're all salivating even more, and we all want to come and try all the vegetables. So thank you both very much. I've got one question that came through to me, which I will do quickly, so that we've only got 1 minute left, but it's a subject I love. Obviously, the Chateauneuf de Pape's been very popular this evening, but it is an expensive style of wine. Are there any other recommendations of a similar style? I actually think you can shop around in the Southern Rhone a lot more than you used to. I mentioned that Chateauneuf de Pape was one of the original AOCs, and Baron de la Roy, who was a lawyer in Chateauneuf de Pape, essentially sort of invented, for better use of the word, the system. He didn't. Cheese we got there first, I think. But it is a protected area, but there are lots of very, very good areas around it. And if you're looking for like, you're not going to find it exactly. However, there are places like Gigondas that also produces incredible Grenache-based Rhone wines, usually about half the price. But you can even go a little bit further. I was about to say down the pecking order, but that's a horrible thing to say. If you love the really hearty stuff, the Plan de Jour, which is actually where I'm sat now, the flat plain, very warm flat plain in the middle of the Rhone, that's great for that really hot style. And then if you prefer the cooler, lighter style, I love the wines of Caran, and they tend to be really cheap because Caran has only just been promoted into cru status. So they're really good value for money. And I heard from a few producers that they're sort of trying not to change their prices, even though they've been promoted. I don't know whether that's true or not. That really could be hearsay, but certainly we haven't seen the prices inflate or elevate since they were promoted. So you can kind of buy cru status, i.e. the same status as Chateauneuf de Pape for a third, a quarter of the price. I can't guarantee they will be better, and I can't guarantee they'll be the same, but I think it's about shopping around and finding some alternatives. There are lots out there. Chateauneuf de Pape is the easiest one to remember. It's the one everyone knows. But Southern Rhone Crus, and also just really, really, really good Côte de Rhone. Sometimes places, if you see a Côte de Rhone, and I will wrap up because I know it's time to move on, but if you see a red Côte de Rhone that's sort of asking for a 12 to 15 pound price, let's say 15 pounds, that's probably actually not your everyday Côte de Rhone, and that will almost be a sort of really, really top place that just might not geographically have fit in some very, very archaic boundaries that were drawn up once upon a time. And the rules around getting those boundaries changed or getting things changed is really hard work. So there's a lot to be discovered. Heinz Mayer, how do I spell that newly promoted crew? Oh, there we go. Tastings team has kindly put it in there. I think that is the most recently promoted one in 2014. Don't hold me to that. Could be around 15. But yes. So without further ado, I'm very excited to talk about this wine. It's a real personal favorite, but I'm really excited as well to go. I'm sure you are, Brooke, as well, with your sweet tooth. So keen to hand over to talk all things sponge, and then I will go on to the wine. So cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Oh, I've just had a note from Ken saying our sponge is still fairly wet. Ken, when I first did mine was a little bit wet as well. I would say once I put it out on the plate, it dried out. But if you do want to pop it in for a couple more minutes, feel free. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Don't you just find different ovens really, really make a difference with this? It
is a hard one for us to get.
Yeah,
because we're using a professional oven and we try and factor that in, but we have done a few tests in our home ovens, but again, it's like
everyone comes back with a different answer.
Yeah. Mine was 12, mine was 9. How was it 9? So it's one of those.
It does firm up a little bit once it's come out, but
it sounds not dissimilar to the bake-off conundrums.
The
temperature in the tent. This doesn't normally happen at home. But yeah, members, we're not going anywhere. If you do want to pop it in for a few minutes, I think Brooke and Danny are going to talk about it for, what will we say, guys, 5 minutes, and that's probably enough time if you want to pop it back in. So I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, let's do it this way around. I'll talk about the wine first. People can pop the sponges back in if they want to, and then that means that they'll be ready when they're eating the sponge. You'll be talking about the sponge. So if you need to, quickly go and do that now. Most importantly for me, if you need to grab a glass as well, and I'll happily talk about this. I promise I won't go over Brooke and Danny though, because I could wax lyrical about this wine all day. So so yes, pop them back in if you need to. And I will tell you a little bit about this Muscat de Baume de Venise from Domaine de Bernardin, 2019 vintage. So we can see it in the glass already. What an incredible color. It's almost rosé-esque. It's this sort of beautiful, golden, gorgeous, it shines out of the glass. I'm actually embarrassed. I've got a very grubby glass. I've had my fingers all over it, but it's a particularly interesting Muscat. You'll find some Muscats do have this sort of orangey color. This one for me almost is golden pink. It's really special. And one of the reasons is that they actually blend 2 grape varieties into this wine, Muscat à Petit Grand Blanc and Muscat à Petit Grand Noir. Some members who like food, I must confess, I have used this wine at another tasting this year. And that is mainly because I really think there are very few wines in the world that go as well with a fruit sponge, or a fruit berry pudding, as well as this one does. Tim, who's behind the scenes this evening, won't mind me saying that we had a really big debate when I told him I wanted to use 2 wines from the Rhone. We really went around the houses trying to find alternatives, but I said, I can't. There is nothing better. I tried other things, but I felt so strongly, so you'll have to excuse me. It's not that I'm sort of coming from the Rhone as well. I'm just like completely Rhone nutty. But there's such different styles that I thought it didn't matter too much. But it is also from the Southern Rhone. They do make a red. It's another cru. So if you want the Chateauneuf-du-Pape alternative, that would be one of them, a red from Baume de Venise. But it's not as rich as a Chateauneuf. What they specialize in and what the majority of production is this Muscat, and it's a vin doux natural. So the alcohol is higher. I think we've probably got the alcohol on the screen there. Yeah, 15%. But it's still got sweetness in it. And what they do to produce this wine is they harvest by hand, but much later. And they harvest those, normally it would be the Blanc variety for most Muscats. But as I mentioned, they have the Noir, the black variety as well in this one, which gives it that more sort of interesting colour, should I say. They harvest late by hand, and then when the wine, they check the sugars in the grape juice, and they need to get it to at least over 250 grams per litre. Legally, Muscat de Baume de Venise only has to be 110. So they have double the amount of sugar in this particular version, which does mean a lot of Muscat de Baume de Venise is not this sweet. And actually, it's usually or very often drunk as an apéro. So you'd have it alongside some pâté or some crudité, playing a game of boule in the garden, pétanque. But this is sweet enough that I think it really, really stands up to pudding, and also to one of the cheeses that I'll mention in a minute. Most famous dessert wine is around that, so that they're sort of moving into dessert wine territory. But what happens is they know that there's that much potential sugar in the wine. The alcoholic fermentation starts, so the sugars are eaten by yeast to create alcohol, but they halt it at just the right point, and they do that by adding in a grape spirit. So a 95% ABV grape spirit. It kills off the yeast that was eating the lovely sugars, and so you're left with a wine here that's 15% total alcohol, but that could have fermented to dryness if we wanted it. And actually around what's becoming quite trendy here are dry muscats, sort of as an apéro again in the Southern Rhone, but this definitely not dry. It's aged in stainless steel before bottling, and it's probably one of the style is called Vin doux natural, and Muscat de Baume de Venise is considered one of if not the most famous of those styles. So yeah, it's a bit different. It's really unloved. I'm loving Jamie and Aidan, apologies again for the pronunciations, comment, very Turkish delight. It is. So if I was going to do a tasting note on this, I would say there's a lot of berries, but it's also really floral, very aromatic. I don't want to say potpourri because that doesn't make it sound very appealing to drink, but it has got that lovely combination of sort of rose petals alongside sort of berries, strawberries, peaches. So yeah, very fruity, but very aromatic as well. And Muscat is one of the grape varieties that actually smells like grapes. So if you smell this and you say, this smells like grapes, I would say, hats off to you. There aren't many grape varieties in the world that do, but this absolutely does smell like grapes. And yeah, I'm loving that sort of rose water Turkish delight thing as well. So what do you two think of it? First of all, is it your first time trying a Muscat de Baume de Venise?
I'm a big fan of sweet wine, so yeah, I have tried some of these before. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not usually a big fan of like sweet wines or dessert wines, but I do like muscats. Like I've used some muscat kind of like vinegars before in food, but I think this is incredible. Like
lovely,
I love it.
Really, really lovely.
Yeah.
I think what I like about it when using it as a food pairing is a lot of sweet wines can be so intensely sweet, but the sugar kind of coats the mouth, and without the acidity, or if there isn't enough acidity, it can often stick and stay around. And I have almost like sugar on my lips, if that makes sense, but my mouth is so watering that it feels very refreshing at the same time. But it is important to really serve it very, very cold, because it doesn't, warm Muscat de Baume de Venise does nobody any favours. So on that point, I'm hoping that people's puddings are now lovely and warm, from the oven. So I would be really delighted if you would let us know a little bit more about these gorgeous sponges, please.
Yeah. Where should we start, Brooke? With the berry cake?
Yeah, with the berry cake.
Yeah. So the berry cake obviously comes in its little foil cup. So it's nice and easy for everyone. Just put in your oven. Unfortunately, I know it's going to be a bit tricky. It's not down to the exact time. Well, I think it's mainly just oven factors that come into that. We do try and implement that with the times we put on, but it's not always possible. Every oven is different at home. Like my oven's different to Brooke's, but once that knife or skewer comes out nice and clean, you know you're good to go. And so in the berry cake, we've got some preserved berries. So see, during the summer months, we've got many sort of berry bushes at the farm, and we take them, like they get all harvested, and we preserve them and we keep them for the winter months where you can't get these. You would have to buy them, and it's not even its season for that. And so we mix that through the cake, and obviously through the cake, those little bits of berries, they have that bit of moisture in there, and that just really helps with the cake not being too dry. There's nothing worse, you get a cake and it's really dry, which then obviously brings on why we have the berry compote there. Adds wetness to the dish, and again it's preserved berries which have been harvested, and we mix some blackberries in there that we can get, and
just the last ones.
Went down and got them the other day. Brooke's been helping out collecting many fruits recently as well. Like I think you're doing some apples the other week as well, which is quite incredible.
Making some cider.
So again, that just brings wetness to the dish, and again we try and link everything to the farm and what we do, and you know, these are preserved and kept, and it's just a great thing that we always have this to rely on, and brings a nice bit of moisture to the dish again in case the cake is overbaked, because it can be a bit tricky, unfortunately. And then we have the white chocolate sauce.
This is my favourite.
This is Brooke being a lover of the chocolate. She loves this one. So the white chocolate, obviously it's not always possible to use things that are native to England, and that we have to bring some things in, but again, it's always about what complements dishes. We should never take that away from the guest experience. If we can put that in, we know it works well, we're going to do it. So yeah, we've got a lovely white chocolate sort of ganache sauce that we put with the dish. That's sort of like sweetness, but not too sweet, but that creaminess, richness, kind of, hopefully it goes well with the tartness of the berries. See, someone said the berries were a bit tart, so that's why we tried to include that, because it has that sweetness there, just to tone down the sharpness of the berries. And then we also have some toasted almonds, just for that nuttiness. Anyone who, I don't know if we had any nut allergies that went out. Did we have any? I'm not sure, but if they did, what we did was we took the berry cake and dried it out. So again, we're just linking it all back to the same dish. By drying it out, we created a bit of nuttiness there from it, and that just became the crumb on the dish for texture. Failing that, we just use almonds. Beautiful nut. You can't go wrong with a toasted flaked almond, I don't think. Incredible thing. And then we have some Mandarin oil or orange oil. And again, it's not always possible to get these things in the UK, but it's a great flavour, and it just really lifts that dish, giving it that nice aroma at the end of the orange. So we just create a nice little orange infusion that we put in there.
Yeah, it's really nice. We do have a lot more freedom with our ingredients, and that's another wonderful thing about the restaurant Henrock. Simon really wanted to use ingredients from his world travels there, whereas Long Clue, sort of really importantly, very strictly as well, we'll really only use ingredients from the British Isles, and any flavours they can't sort of find, that they have to find substitutes almost, but that's the lovely thing about our sort of collection of restaurants now. We have sort of a really nice collection of different flavour profiles depending on where you go, and I think Simon really enjoys having a bit more freedom at Henrock to bring in flavours that he would never dream of putting on the menu at Long Clue. But again, like Danny says, when we find flavours, we can choose things that just work and complement the dish really well.
Yeah, I have to say that Mandarin oil, it's funny as well, because there's small tubes you get. There's wine tasting sort of kits that you can get that have very similar sort of vials of smells. And many members may have used them before, or if I've spotted someone doing their WSET3, chances are they'll have be familiar with these kits. What's so funny is when it arrived, it looked like one, and then I opened it and smelt it, and I was like, "It is one. It's Mandarin. it's a tasting kit, piece of apparatus." It was so aromatic and fresh and lovely, and it was really unexpected. I think particularly when you're home cooking, there might be a lot of home bakers at home who might choose to make a sponge and would know how to make a ganache, but to add an oil to a cake really sort of threw me. But it was like I was about to say the icing on the cake, and I really didn't mean to make a pun, but it really did it just sort of elevated the whole dish, and it made it actually much easier to pair, because again, this is a really aromatic wine, and adding that kind of final aromatic touch just meant the marriage went really, really well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, I can really pick out those flavors.
Oh, well, there's been lots of comments about the meal, and yes, I think some people just said 5 minutes more and their sponge was perfect. So that's great. I'm glad we flipped it over. That worked well. So thank you, Brooke and Danny, and apologies for going off piste. But it has been an absolute pleasure. We are definitely around to stick around for a couple more questions. I know that we've had one already, which is for me, but please do get your Danny and Brooke questions in as well. But the question for me is about whether you need to open a red wine early to let it breathe. And obviously we did send some instructions about what to open and when. It really does depend on the wine, and there's no yes or no hard or fast answer to that. The Chateauneuf de Pape we had this evening was actually designed to be drunk young. And for me, often wines that have seen oak or designed to age then need time when you open them. And it's not a scientific rule per se, but often those wines will tend to need a little bit longer to open up and show themselves. It's not a universal truth, but that often tends to be the case. Whereas anything sort of fruitier, younger, and this Chateauneuf de Pape was a fruitier and younger one, if that's the wine that you're referring to there, to that particular one, Nick, I don't think it does need time to open up. I would suggest, and this is my absolute favorite thing to do, pour a big decent glass and enjoy it, and then come back to it halfway through your meal, and see how it's evolved. There are particular wines that really do change as you go down the bottle. Tends to be the more expensive, the more evolution you can get even through the course of one evening. But what you don't want, what you do want is for your last glass to be the best glass. What you don't want is to have left something open for absolutely ages, have the perfect first glass, and then for all of the subsequent ones after that to be over the edge and lose their flavor, because that, you can over air a wine. So my view is, it's almost like leave them wanting more. My view is, don't overdo it. Make sure that last glass is the best one that you had, rather than starting at the top and over airing. So yeah, it's a dark art. There's no right answer. But yeah, some reds benefit from it, but generally the fruitier younger ones, you just don't need to at all. So that's that question. Brooke and Danny, I actually have one for you from earlier, which was, I believe, sorry, I've lost it, but I've got it. I'm going to slightly paraphrase it. The question was, if you couldn't work for Simon, where and who in the world would you choose to work? I'm going to slightly paraphrase it, because I'm going to say it doesn't need to be a chef. I'd like to know if you could do anything else, regardless, whether it's in the restaurant world or whether I don't know, you might want to be a school caterer. I've no idea. Is there any other job that you'd like to have done?
Yeah, we were talking about this when we saw it coming through, and I think if we're talking about sort of in the hospitality industry, I think we both sort of have to agree that we couldn't now work for someone who didn't have and hold that ethos, like Simon. We almost feed off his passion a little bit. He is so inspiring, so passionate about sustainability and using local produce from the farm, and I just absolutely wouldn't be able to work for anyone who didn't hold those same values. I just am really struggling to think of a chef, and I don't think at the moment I've got any other desires to go into any other industries. I don't have a great answer there, but just Simon is just really quite an inspirational person to work for. He is a chef who is still so much at the forefront of our company, absolutely leading the way. No, he is on the pass at Long Clume
pretty much every night.
Yeah, all the time. I think when we first reopened after one of the lockdowns, he didn't take a single service off. He didn't miss a single service. He's just so dedicated to making sure that everything is just right. And he's down at the farm every morning, isn't he? Sort of having a little chat with John and seeing how everything's coming on, and how all the ingredients are developing, and what he's going to be making those into the dishes. And I don't know. Have you got anything? Any new sector in mind?
Well, I mean, I remember growing up, and there was probably 2 jobs I really wanted to do if it wasn't a chef. I'm really into motorsports. I'd love to be an F1 driver. I just think that would just be an unbelievable job, just on the edge. I think part of being a chef, you have them services and you're busy, and it's that adrenaline. You're just always just on that level of, it's going to be busy, but it's okay. And I think that's why I would enjoy being an F1 driver. I definitely don't have the ability to be one, that's for sure. So I would love to do that, but I'm also a massive music fan. I think this month I went to 4 live music events. So I'm I really like music. And I come from Manchester, which obviously has its heritage in a lot of music with rock bands and Oasis. So it would be also a rock musician, I guess, would be my other big one. Just stood on a stage, let's say at Glastonbury, I guess. That would be the pinnacle, I guess, wouldn't it? That's what I would love to do.
You're definitely a man of 2 sides, Danny. Your dream job is to be a rock musician, but your favourite desert island meal is onion soup. Yeah. I don't know how many, don't know if Oasis put onion soup on their rider, but...
I'll take my onion soup to my Oasis, then we can say.
There we go.
There we go.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I have to say thank you to both of you for a really wonderful evening, but also actually for putting together an amazing menu. Lots of people were saying the meal's been outstanding, beautiful food and wine. I really do think personally, but also professionally, but I do think personally, having done a few of these, the food that we were sent was exceptional. And I know that my team behind the scenes are thoroughly enjoying it. I'm getting lots of messages. I think they're probably, they're sort of managing the questions whilst fitting mouthfuls of sponge in. So a huge thank you from all of our team at the Wine Society for the love, the energy, all of it. And thank you so much for, David and Dawn have just said agree, having done lots of these meals during lockdown. So thank you. Delighted that you're carrying on, because you are seasonal, aren't you? So you will do a different menu each month as well, that members, if they wanted to, could sign up to via your website directly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we just like to say thank you so much for your feedback, because working in a restaurant, you go and touch the tables. So how was everything? You can see everyone's reactions to the food. It's one thing that I think we both really struggle in, especially because we do work that Rogan and Co and Long Clume both open kitchens. The chefs get to experience that as well, sort of seeing people's enjoyment of the food. But we really miss out on hearing feedback. Was it good? Was it not? And I think we work with these meals every day. We put a lot into them, but don't often get to
direct feedback saying this is great, or this could be better. Like constructive criticism is also great. Like we enjoy hearing that. Like like some people saying it's a bit berries are a bit tart. So we enjoy all these things because we don't get it. So I think this has been really a big eye opener.
Great seeing the feedback. It's been really nice actually to. And
I've enjoyed learning about wines. I've learned so much tonight. So
well, there we go. I've learned so much as well, and it really has been great fun. And yes, you sorted out my dinner, which was I've had 2 unbelievable dinners in the last 6 weeks, so I'm absolutely thrilled. I couldn't be happier. So thank you both so much, and thank you as well to members for joining. We appreciate feedback, particularly these kind of events. So please do let us know. I'm going to send an email around tomorrow with the recording of this session, but also really open to feedback. The breaks work, etc. We're continuing to try and build on these. We do have another event that's sort of gone live and sort of hasn't, so I have to apologize. We're having a few new website glitches, but we do have an event with Cafe Spice Namaste next month. And then Brooke and Danny, if you'll have us again, we'd love to team up with you guys again in the future for another one of these next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we've got all the team as well. I'm sure Tom, our executive chef, he'd love to, and Simon. It's just such a busy time at the moment, but he'd love to do this as well. Yeah, we'd absolutely love to. Thank you so much for having us.
My brain's already whirring. My stomach rumbling. But thank you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and yes, have a lovely weekend as well.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.